So now you should have your rectangle drawn with roughly a 1-inch border, but the more important thing is that your rectangle is 8 by 10 inches. And if you use that method in the previous video, hopefully you'll be able to find. You can go through and check. Each side should be 8 by 10. Now I've printed off my reference photo. And one of the great things about using Photopea and resizing this image to 8 by 10 is that when it prints, it's actually 8 by 10 inches. It's the exact same size as that gap in my paper. So when it goes to getting started with your portrait, you have 3 options. The first one is you can certainly freehand this. You can go through and add your shapes and kind of guess out where everything is. One thing I'll do in situations like that is try to place my portrait right next to it, and I can kind of imaginarily draw lines over, so the mouth would be in here, his eyes would be in here, and just kind of lightly draw out these markers for me that I could build up. You can even move your paper over this way and find out, okay, his nose goes down from here. If you really want to be specific, you can measure, okay, it's about 2 inches over to the edge of his hair. And you can take measurements with your pencil using the tip and your thumb. Okay, so from the edge of the paper to his temple here is that far, and I can make a little mark. And then I have some dots to connect for this. So you can freehand it out. If you prefer to not use a grid, you can check things. A big tip I use often whenever I'm drawing a portrait is flipping it upside down. That abstracts things, and you're not thinking about this so much as an eye, but as a shape, and that'll make it work. So that's one strategy you can do, and this allows you a little bit more creative freedom if you want to go more in the like caricature realm, or represent your person in kind of a fun, unique way. But if you're going more for capturing exactly what you see, you're probably going to want to use a grid technique. And I want to briefly go over 2 different techniques. The first is one that you've already used in this class, and that's just using the battleship coordinates kind of square grid. And that's pretty easy to set up on both your paper and your drawing. You're just going to measure and mark every inch. So I put my ruler down at the bottom again, always lining that 0 up with the edge. I'm going to mark 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So every whole number, every line coming above a whole number on there. And on this ruler, that is the line that comes straight up from the number. And then 8, I won't need a mark, and at 0, I won't need a mark because those are my edges. Again, you always want to measure from a common edge, so I'm going to slide that ruler up rather than turn my paper over. I'm going to make a mark at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, no 8 because it's already there. And then just like with doing your border, you're going to find your marks, line your ruler up, and grid it out. Now for this, you may want to draw a little bit darker. You may also want to use a pen if that's helpful. So you're going to create your columns, and then you're going to be able to create your rows. So I'm just lining up those 1-inch gaps that I've already drawn out, kind of quickly going through and adding this all up. And then you're going to repeat the process. And for this, again, using lines that you've already drawn or the edge of the photograph, especially if it's been cropped, will work well. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Come back down to the bottom, do the same. So always finding your 0 on the ruler, matching it up to the edge, and marking every inch, those whole numbers. Give you a nice grid. Now some people use 2-inch grids, some people use half-inch grids. It's your preference, but a 1-inch grid is a great place to start. Nice even numbers. At this size, you're getting a lot of detail in there. So you're just gridding it out. So this will break your drawing down into roughly 80 different squares. Some of them will have a lot of detail, like the areas around the eyes and the nose, but this will allow you to make it a little simpler. You can take it step by step. Now, if you get to a part near the eyes and you want to, you can always break that inch down into half-inch because there's a lot of detail. So I'll take my ruler, 0 and 1, mark the center. So you can subdivide this if you need. If you're drawing a specifically complicated area, I'll sometimes break it down can draw other grids in there just to make it a little bit easier. So now my one large square will be 4 smaller squares, and you can even divide those if you want. So to do that on your paper, you're going to go to your paper and you're going to repeat the process. So around your rectangle, you're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Going to repeat the thing at the top. Now, here's the big difference. When you are working on your final paper, very important to use a softer pencil. If you press too hard with something like an H, it is going to indent your paper. It is going to leave a line if you go to shade over it. So I'm drawing with a softer HB pencil. I'm actually barely touching the paper as I line my ruler up like we've talked before. I'm just pressing the tip against the ruler and lightly sliding it. Try to challenge yourself. How light can you make it? So I'm making those lines so they're just barely showing up. These are just guides. They're not going to be an actual part of your final drawing. You're just going to use them to help get the details in the right location. So using your reference photo. So again, just the same process. Going through marking every inch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Not 10 because it's 10 inches. That line's already there. Lining it up just light. Very, very light. And by measuring from common edges, you get nice perpendicular boxes. You don't get weird trapezoids in there. And take your time on this. I'm going pretty quick. Just for the sake of the demo so you can see it from start to finish. But if you go too fast, if you slide your ruler over even by 1/4 of an inch, your details can get off. It's better to go slower, and then you have your grid set up. And now I can start going, and I usually do the alphabet at the top, so A, B, C, D, E, F, G, 1, 2, 3, and I start going through my coordinates. I'm not going to include any details in here. It's not until I hit the 3rd box. I'll even line these up. Okay, so my detail comes in here, comes up about that far, and I'm just doing a light pencil sketch just of the contours of each box. And if you want, you can draw all those nice details, but I usually start keeping it pretty loose, starting at the top, working from left to right, top to bottom, just refining these things. If it helps, flip it upside down too. So that's one grid drawing method. If you want an abbreviated grid drawing method, you can take your photo, and what we're going to do is the X and plus method. So this is actually a really simplified grid. It's going to give you just a few kind of pie pieces. So what I will do with this is I will first make a plus sign on here, and I'm going to go to my photo and divide it in half. So I'm going to line the 0 up with the edge. See, it's 8. Half of 8 is 4. I'll do the same thing at the bottom. So I'm just going to quarter the photo into even quadrants. So 4 and 4. I want to connect it. And then I'm going to do the same to the sides. Now this should be 10, so half of 10 is 5. Back down to the bottom. Half of this is 5. I'm going to divide that in half. Okay, so I have my plus. Now I'm going to do diagonals, the x's. So basically I'm going to get 8 pie pieces that I can work with, and that will help on this. So after you've added the plus, you're going to divide each area using diagonals. And what we can do is use this center corner because our ruler is not long enough. What I'm actually going to do is just line up this corner with this corner and draw this line through. And I can continue with that line. Should hit the other corner. So I'm adding my x's here. Again, lining up your corners at a diagonal. If you go through the center, you should be able to line your ruler back up and continue through. And that will give you 8 quadrants to work with. Or not 8 quadrants, but 8 pie pieces. On your paper, you can do the same thing. You'll just be able to go in and divide it up. So 4 and a half of 8. 4 and a half of 8. Again, drawing lightly anytime you are using a pencil on your final paper. And I'm going to divide my long side into 10. 10 into 2 is 5. 10 into 2 is 5. I've got that. Adding my plus. And now what I can do is divide from corner to corner. Keep that line going. Finish it off. So this is a quicker way to grid your entire photo by using an X and a plus sign. And this will give you 8 nice quadrants. And the nice thing about this is you have different points in this where it meets. So I see the nose starts down here, the nose comes over in this pie piece. So I can use this to help kind of guide my placement. The eye is up on this line. I can measure out using my pencil tip, slide my thumb. Okay, so that's about where the eye is. Eye meets in there. So this is just giving us some points over our drawing if you don't want to do the full grid, but it gives you some places to kind of check yourself. So you can go in and use where these lines intersect to come up with details. So as you're working with your photo, you can kind of eyeball it and use the photo itself. You can do the general coordinate grids using 1-inch squares and a coordinate system at the top, an alphabet and the numbers to guide you through a gridded drawing that way. Or you can use the plus and the X method to give you a more open option, but also something where you can see where lines intersect. So using those, create an outline contour drawing of your portrait and then move on to value shading.